It is the most beautiful day in as long as I can remember. I don't know how warm it is, but warm enough to be outside and enjoying the sunshine. And after a long winter, we are so ready for days like this. I know we'll still get snow and I know we'll still be really, really cold some days, but every day that's like this, it feels like a little bit of a victory, like one step closer to spring. And so I told my kids last night, if they got up and did their homeschool early this morning, we could spend the day outside together in the sunshine. And they took that very seriously and they got up at about 5:30. So I'm already kind of a little tired, but they were zealous about getting their work done. And so we were able to spend the better part of the morning outside, just getting some fresh air and enjoying our time together. And then we came in for lunch, and that's when any homemaker knows disaster tends to strike, because it's like the house starts to eat itself with all the stuff and all the dishes. So we just cleared all that away. And I thought we could maybe make some delicious dinner together because the sun's still out. And I want to go back outside this afternoon and enjoy as much time as I can out in the gardens. This is one of my go-to dinners when I don't really want to be fussing over the stove too much. Just a few staple ingredients, a lot of which are going to come from our pantry that we're still eating from. So we've got some carrots, some onions, some jarred tomatoes, some mincemeat, and wine, olive oil, a few good things. So let's make a delicious bolognese together. Then it can simmer on the stove while we're outside having fun, and we can come in and have a fabulous feast to celebrate this beautiful day. One of the things that makes bolognese so perfect is time. It needs time to meld together. And so morning time after breakfast or lunchtime is really a great time to begin it, because it does need some time to marry on the stove. And so I'm going to start with some butter and some really delicious olive oil. This is actually from Jovial. You guys have heard me talk about them, but when I went to the Jovial getaway in Italy a couple of years ago, there was a chef there named Francois, and he's the one who taught me how to make this Bolognese recipe. And so as he told me the details of how to do it, I wrote it all down, and now it's become one of our probably most enjoyed and most utilized recipes because it's so simple. But, and this is what I love about recipes like this, you can dress it up as much as you'd like. You could make this really something fancy with some homemade pasta, an amazing salad, really exceptional wine. Or it can be, hey, I was outside gardening all day. I'm just going to boil up some good store-bought pasta and pour some of this delicious bolognese sauce on top and call it a day. And just enjoy that with a cold beer. You could totally do that too. And so I love meals like that you can dress up or dress down accordingly. So you can see these are a yellow of Parma onion, and I harvested these last June. And so they've been out of the ground now. I guess it was July. So they've been out of the ground now for, how many months is that? A few months. 5 months? I don't know. A certain amount of time. And they're still just absolutely beautiful. So if you want to grow onions to store, just make sure you use a storage variety. Yellow of Parma is a really good one. And this is kind of a sweet onion, which I prefer in the bolognese versus a purple onion. I just like it a little bit more. Okay. Got that pretty hot. I don't know if you guys have ever talked and cooked at the same time, but it's not the easiest thing. My kids will attest to that because they'll come in and talk to me while I'm cooking, and I'm just mindlessly saying, sure, honey, whatever you say. All right, I'm not even going to bother. This is a Bolero carrot. This is a storage carrot as well. I'll link a video below if you guys want to check out how I store these in my cold room. But you can see, I mean, this is, I can't actually break it. It's too strong. But it's still nice and fresh. And this was pulled out in June. And so it has been out for 7 months now, which is extraordinary. And I'm going to actually, you can just, if you don't have a food processor, you can just do this by hand. But I love chopping these up in it because it's just way easier. And I love how it actually kind of melts, into the sauce. Oh, Kitty came to visit. So you can see I'm not even really bothering peeling the carrots at all. Just throw it all in there. And now we're just going to get this like as fine as we can get it in the food processor. Perfect. Okay. Got my pot nice and hot, and we're gonna put all this right into that hot butter and oil. The point of what we're doing now is not to brown anything. We just want everything to soften. I want you to think of bolognese as like a warm hug from your grandmother. That's how it should feel when you eat it. It should be so comforting. And one of the ways that we achieve that is by giving it time for all the flavors to marry and by not overly sauteing or overly browning anything. We want to keep it soft, but don't let that make you think this doesn't pack a serious punch of flavor. Okay, let's talk about the meat that we're going to use in this dish. Traditionally, a bolognese is made with veal and pork and beef all mixed together, like a third of each. I don't have all those things right now, but what I do have is some veal from a steer that we butchered earlier this year. And why I like using veal versus beef is veal is a lot softer. It just doesn't have that same bite that ground beef has. That being said, I have made this dish with every combination of beef and pork and lamb and whatever else is left that I didn't mention. Every combination I have tried, they are all delicious. So use what you have. This is a great way to elevate an otherwise very humble meat. Something like ground beef, it's not something we get super excited about, right? Well, this will transform that, I promise you. So I have about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds of ground veal here. And so now that my carrots and onions have just softened a bit, I'm gonna go ahead and add this in. Now my goal here is not to brown it, remember, but just to sort of get it cooking and get it soft. While that meat is just getting browned a little bit and gently starting to cook, I'm gonna do a clean sweep because I want this kitchen to be clean when I come in from gardening later this afternoon. Cleaning as you go in the kitchen was something my mom always told me to do. And I wish I could say I've always listened to her. And I'm starting to more so because it really does make a difference. I love being able to enjoy my meal and really enjoy my food. And when the kitchen's a total wreck, it just takes away from that for me. So I always spend a few minutes cleaning up. Okay, the meat has just turned that really soft brown color, which is exactly what I want it to do. Nothing dark or harsh. And now a very, very important part of bolognese is to add a good wine. You can add this whole bottle if you like. I'm going to add about half because I'm not making a super full batch. And yes, I did choose this one because it had a twist top. There is something that wine lends to this dish that you just can't get without it. It adds this whole depth of flavor. And I found that after years of enjoying this Bolognese sauce, it's actually quite hard to just go back to a basic red spaghetti sauce as we know it in America, just because it lacks that depth that Bolognese has. Okay. Dead simple, right? So this is going to cook down in the wine for about 20 minutes, at which point I'll come in and actually add 4 cups of milk. I know, kind of a weird ingredient for a sauce. We're gonna add in that milk, and then that will simmer down as well and really just kind of hang out and meld in there for the rest of the afternoon. So that means we get to go have fun in the gardens. It was absolutely glorious out there. Oh, so refreshing. But I came in, as I thought, very hungry. So actually, while the Bolognese finishes simmering and melding all together, I thought, what the heck? Let's make some cream puffs. Didn't know where my butter was. Found it. All right. If you've never made choux pastry before, prepare to be excited because it's actually really simple. And no, it's not like S-H-O-E, choux. It's French, C-H-O-U-X, choux. And that's what we're gonna make our cream puffs out of. This is a butter, egg, water, flour extravaganza that puffs up super light and airy in the oven. And that's exactly what I want. This was actually, this notebook is where I keep all of my cooking community recipes. So this is half of them that we've done so far. And this cream puff recipe actually was in the very first month of our very first cooking community, and I still use it all the time. I just made it actually for Stuart's book group a couple weeks ago, and they were a massive hit. So I'll be sure to share the link for both of the recipes that we're cooking together today below. We're gonna start our choux pastry with 2 cups of water and this entire thing of butter. Woo! See that? Melt that down until it's just all combined. Okay, I've got my water going here, my butter's in there, and now I'm going to add in 300 grams of flour all at once. And you know what? I should have thought ahead because this is not exactly the recipe that you want to do after a day in the garden when your muscles are already really sore, because choux pastry requires a little bit of elbow grease. What I'm going to do now is just mix it to combine it, and I'm going to cook that flour for just like a minute. Not very long. Over the lowest heat it'll go. I remember when my grandma was driving a car when I was really young. And I remember reaching over to her and going like this on her arm. And this is kind of what this dress reminds me of a little bit, actually. You're probably seeing my arm do that right now. But it's all for the shoe. It's totally worth it. Isn't that kind of an interesting consistency? Okay, this is actually the point in the recipe where I call in help. That's you. What I'm gonna do is add 1 egg at a time and have Stu just mix it in, mix it in, mix it in. We're actually gonna shut the heat off now that the flour is cooked. So I'm gonna add a total of 6 eggs, 1 at a time, stirring until it's completely incorporated. And this is going to get really rich and really yellow. How's it feel to be on the other side?
Great.
You're so strong. Look at those biceps work.
Maybe there should be a permanent change.
Yeah, you should do the cooking shows from now on. You look good on camera.
I don't trust your shoddy camera work.
That's fair. Ready for the next egg?
Okay.
Go ahead. That was hard, even with help. But I swear that's the hardest part. Now it's time to get your hands a little dirty, so make sure you wash them after milking the cow. But we're gonna work with a little bit of dough at a time, about the size of a walnut. Pick a size that you like. Let's say 50 grams. Do not mush it. Just tenderly, very tenderly, roll it in your hands. My friend Abby's mom used to make cream puffs, and I'd never had one until I met Abby and Abby's mom. And I remember the very first cream puff I had, and I thought, this is the very best thing that I have ever eaten. And I still feel that way about them. This is my dessert of choice. I would take this rich vanilla, yummy maple flavor that we're going to work with over chocolate any day. It really is worth getting a digital scale and taking the time to measure them out, because otherwise some will be overdone and some will be underdone. And choux pastry is all about cooking out that moisture. And as it cooks, it leaves these gigantic air bubbles, which is what makes the dough so airy and so light. And so you do not want a stodgy cream puff. Very important. Squeeze one more in there. You know, I know it can seem maybe like a silly thing to go to all this effort to make food from scratch. Get my hair on my face. For your family, especially on a random Wednesday. But maybe that's the total point. Maybe it's not about these gigantic, amazing dinners that we're all missing out on as of late, or going to the fancy restaurants. Maybe it's kind of more about creating that moment right in your own home. These look beautiful and shiny, and now they're ready to go into a 350-degree oven and get nice and light and puffy. You really have to go by feel here and not by time. When you pick one up, it should feel like air, and it should sound kind of hollow when you tap it. And that's how you'll know that they're done. While these bake, I'm gonna give the kitchen a good once over again. I tracked in quite a bit of mud from my gardening. I'm gonna start a fire, put on some music, light the candles, and we are going to enjoy this Wednesday night to the fullest. There's always that point in every meal where you start to get a little overwhelmed and maybe the kids are bickering and maybe the sauce is boiled over a little bit. And that's why it's so important to set the ambiance of your kitchen, because then when those things come, which they inevitably will, you still have these little pockets of joy to look at. So we've got a nice warm fire now, and the candles are lit and the wine is poured, and we are going to make it. And actually, we're gonna throw together a little impromptu basket to take to our neighbors who are in need of a meal. So we're gonna be sharing the Bolognese, which is great, and that's perfect. Just checked on the cream puffs and they are coming along nicely. And so while they finish baking, we're going to make the actual cream that goes inside of the cream puffs. So this is going to be a base of milk and egg yolks and sugar. I use a lot of maple sugar in my kitchen because I just absolutely love the taste of it. And aside from meringues, maple sugar does pretty well substituting for white sugar in your kitchen. Little pinch of salt. And actually, the neat thing about maple sugar or rapadura or sucanat, all kind of different whole sugars, is you don't really need to add vanilla extract because they already have that molassesy depth of flavor that white sugar lacks. So omit that because it's super expensive anyway. All right, we're putting our laconche to the test here. We're gonna get all the burners up and running. Okay, I'm going to whisk this over low heat. And again, if you want the exact measurements for this, then check out the show notes below the video and I'll make sure to link to the blog post. Whisk to combine, and then we're gonna add a little bit of flour to thicken it up to give that really nice cream structure so that it'll hold inside the cream puff. Whisk it as best you can. You might have a few little flour lumps left in there after it's all said and done, but you can just run it through like a little fine sieve like this. It'll be totally fine. Or you can just put it in the cream puff and no one will know. Normally I would do homemade pasta, but because we're taking this to go, I'm just gonna use some packaged egg pasta that I have. This is the perfect tagliatelle, which is perfect for bolognese. And so, oh, we're boiling now. Okay, whew, it's getting hot in here. So we're just gonna throw this in so that we can package it up and get it to them by supper time. Now to finish off the bolognese, so we've added our milk and our tomatoes. We've let it hang out for hours on the stove over super, super low while we were out playing outside in the sunshine. To finish it off, you just want to make sure it's seasoned to taste with salt and pepper, and then add in about a half a cup of heavy cream. And that's going to give that yummy, creamy texture back to it. It's going to lighten up the color and it's going to bring the whole thing together. So do that at just about 15 minutes before you're ready to eat. Perfect. Okay. So there's the Taylor sauce. I'm going to stick it there so it can cool down a little bit here before we take it to them.